Good evening, everybody. I have 6 o'clock, so we will start the meeting tonight. We have a couple that may join us later. I did get a text from Gary Walsh that he might or might not be able to make it. And of course, Richard Johnson is maybe going to make it next Monday night. So we do have a quorum. Tonight, Ms. Vicky had passed out the minutes from the last meeting that took place on September the 21st. You had a chance to review those minutes. Are there any additions or subtractions or any questions to the minutes that are in front of you? Okay. If not, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Burton has the motion. Mr. Davis has the second. With no more discussion, all in favor of passing the minutes, say aye. All opposed, like sign. The minutes are approved. Discussion point tonight will relate back to the compensation study, which is where we left off last time we met, and merit increases. And the gentleman that was here last time with us, as they were reviewing that, Mr. Thompson, is not here with us tonight. We didn't expect him to be, but we do have, of course, the mayor, and we do have the county attorney that were part of this process, and Ms. Vicky as well. And so to kind of get up to speed, since the mayor was not here last time, we did go through the compensation study. We did have some questions from Mr. Thompson about how it was structured and what do we do. And I wanted to say that one of the things that we're wrestling with a little bit at this moment, and maybe we can shed some light on this ourselves, or maybe we end up with a combination of things, but you have Mr. Thompson that highly recommended to use the step increases over the idea of merit increases or merit being part of the personnel policies. He said the other merit would have some struggles, but I'm not so sure that we can't blend some things, but we're kind of at a little bit of an impasse at the moment. We need to work through because a lot of the things that are in our changes from Mr. Davis, as he pointed out very clearly, that it appears as though there may be a lot of things that gear itself towards merit rather than the step increases. So can you guys kind of help us kind of understand where we're going with that? Or am I on the right path with this, guys, to talk about that? Do we need to go there right off the bat, or do we want to wait a minute before we go into that? What do y'all think?
I think that if we look at how we're writing the handbook, and I believe, I mean, I did mention this to the mayor just for a few minutes the other night. You know, if we look at how we're writing this, we're going towards some merit performance evaluations. And so therefore, if you're gonna be able to do performance evaluations, which, I mean, that's my opinion, I think that's the right way to go. Then with this, we've just got to, we could still go by this kind of a setup, but it can't just be that, okay, every year at your year anniversary, you get this 2.35% increase. It would have to be known, okay, if you score this amount or higher or whatever on your performance evaluation, you will get that increase. And you might even get two steps up based on your performance versus someone that might not get anything. So I don't, we just got to get to an understanding of that one way or the other. I mean, I think this was done good. I do. I just don't, it was conflicting last time just because we didn't have, you know, maybe the direction from you that says, hey, yeah, we are, you know, going to go towards a merit. We're going to utilize this in a different way. You know, that's my comments.
Mr. Dickey.
If I understand merit, is that I don't think I go that way, because if you go by merit, it's the supervisor might not like this individual. You know, I'd rather go by the scale, and when the time comes that guy get promoted, he don't have to worry about merit or evaluation. He knows that he's gonna get paid. But merit is like trying to be brand nose. You know, I've been in the military for 43, in the government for 43 years, and I know how politics work. Oh, you do me a favor for his, I give you this. Now, I don't go with merit because it's too much favoritism.
Okay. Mr. Davis?
Then how do you reward the folks that's doing the work? Because you've got folks that's not doing the work and they're going to get rewarded. You got the people that's doing the work's not going to get anything, or they're not getting anything more than the one not doing the work. So, and you have that throughout the workforce everywhere. And if you look around, people in here say, yep, I know somebody just like that.
Right. Mr. Burton?
Commissioner Davis, I agree totally. The merit can be put in with the step plan. And obviously, hopefully by now, everybody's an adult enough to whether or not they can say, no, you haven't completed your job tasks. You have completed them. You've gone well and above your job tasks. There is certain ways to do a merit increase to follow the step plan, but there has to be a starting way somewhere, and especially if the county, if we're doing it with the merit increase in the books already. I'm with Mr. Davis on that totally. There is ways to go with it. There is the right way to go with it. Hopefully, like I said, the bad way won't be taken into effect as far as Mr. Dickey has brought up. So
I'd like to go ahead and ask the other two members, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to either the mayor and or the county attorney. Ms. Baker, your thoughts?
I agree. It should be done with the merits. I will say though, we need to do something. A lot of our county employees are really underpaid. And my assumption was this wage study, if nothing else, it's a starting point. We can implement the merit with the step plan. But like I said, I think we definitely need to do something.
Thank you. Mr. Jewell?
Well, I think in a perfect world, we all assume everyone is doing their job to the best of their ability. And probably if they're not, they need to be replaced. But having been in a supervisory situation many, many times, it's not always easy to replace people, even if they're maybe subpar in their job. You tend to try to hold on to them and try to encourage them to do better. It is a bit of a discouraging point to people when they're busting their butt and they see people that are not, and they get the same increase that they get. I had my initial thoughts on this was the step. It wasn't an either or, that the steps would be a way of implementing the merit pay. If you've done a good job and you know you're going to get at least this, and like Mr. Davis said, if you've done a great job, you might need to get more than that. But it gives you a set way of doing that in a fair environment. It all comes back to management, and a lot of us probably have had been in management situations, and some of us haven't. We have people in leadership that have never been in any management roles, and I don't know. It's a learning curve on. It's not something that's innate. It's something that you must be schooled in and learned, and you can learn it by trial and error over a period of time. But it's something that's very important that you have those skills when you assume those roles. So I think I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think the step plan that we've got here and the different classifications, although at first glance, since we've never dealt with it, seemed to be too many classifications or whatnot, probably isn't, because of the broad base that you're applying them across in something such as government. So, you know, if we can come up with some, for lack of a better term, hybrid system where we stay with merit, and if the merit's there, then this is what it equates to in the step system. I think probably that's going to give us the best of both worlds. Now it's going to be very subjective to whoever is making those evaluations, be it a department head or the mayor or an elected official or whatever. And I think therein lies the conundrum as to whether you can be fair to all or whether you're going to be fair to a few. Gets back to this management thing. So I guess that's my thoughts. I don't know that I articulated them very well, but I've given it a lot of thought. And having been in management, having been an employee of the county, have been in supervisory position, I see all sides of this. And I am 100% with Mary Ann. We need to do something. And we need to try to take care, particularly in the job market we have now. We have got to take care of our good employees. And if they're not good employees, then management needs to find good employees and not be hesitant to let someone go. Because we live in a state where you can do that.
Very well, very well spoken. To have heard from everybody, I do think that we're all of the consensus that in the time that we're living right now and in current events, pay increases are going on daily as a reaction to whether it be inflation or whatever the causes are. We're seeing it happen every day. We saw a station in Wilson County, EMS station shut down because they didn't have enough people to manage. We have an employment problem, and we have a compensation problem. And you're seeing places react to it with higher pay. I've seen it in my family. My oldest son was given a substantial increase, and it wasn't a month later that a competitor came by and went, "We want to talk to you too." And then, you know, with bonuses, and that's not just relating itself to one industry. You know, I talked to the sheriff's department. He says the biggest problem we've got is retention. Well, when it comes to safety in the community, you want people to be familiar with the area in which you live in and not constantly be a farm system, so to speak, for those that are around us. So I think the consensus of this group is we're going to have to do something, and it's going to be up to us to maybe draw up the rough draft to then take before the full commission to then say, what are we going to do? But I don't think anybody here is saying, I think what we got's okay. That being said, as you all have looked through this, and we had the study last meeting that we had, I'm going to turn the floor over to you all for a minute to kind of give us y'all's thoughts about how do we best put this together to where it's going to be the biggest bang for the buck for everybody. But we all want to do something. So I'm going to turn the floor over.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a lot of what some of the members said is exactly how I envisioned it, that this pay grade or scale that has been presented, that would be what, if you have an employee come in, they come in on step one, and each job has been classified into a certain grade. And how I envision this going out as far as merit, I see using this pay scale along with the performance evaluations to say who's going to get the raise and who's not. And I'll just do it as a hypothetical. I'll give you two hypothetical employees. You say you've got Bob, he's on grade 5, and he's currently at the step where he's getting $13.84 an hour. Comes in for a performance evaluation. Bob is never late, always, never misses days, comes in, does his job. You don't have to tell Bob what to do. If he doesn't have something to do, he looks for something to do and is a real go-getter. Model employee. Comes in, does a performance evaluation. The supervisor or department head says, "You've done a very good job this year," and they want to reward Bob for what he's done. They say, "Okay, you're going to get up to the next step. You're going to go to $14.16 an hour." All right, then if you have Ted come in, Ted is habitually late, misses days. If he doesn't have somebody standing right over top of him, tell him what to do, he stands around, all this kind of stuff. Well, he looks at Bob or Ted and says, Ted, you've got these problems. We got to get them fixed. They'll put them on a employee improvement plan. But they'll say, Bob, hey, Ted, this year you really don't deserve a raise. You didn't do much. You didn't do what you're supposed to. So they'll stay at the 1384 step. And to here, I saw it as a carrot to incentivize employees to get better, to strive to do better, and to reward those who are doing so, and not have the situation where you've given automatic raises to employees and you've got one group that's doing everything they're supposed to, and that's the kind of employees you wish you could have everybody like that, and they're getting the same increase as the guy next to them that might not be doing what they're supposed to do. That's just going to create problems inside the labor base. And so that's why I see this working. The department head doesn't have to guess what kind of raise to get them. It's all built into this scale. Right there it is. But whether they get it or not is based on the performance evaluation, which is already part of the personnel policy. So the performance evaluation is not new. What was new was the language tying any increases to merit. And I saw this as a good, everybody knows what the next step is. The employee knows if I do good, here's what my next pay raise is going to be. The supervisor or department head knows if this employee does real good, here's what I need to start budgeting for next year when they bring it to me. So I just saw incorporating this scale in with that performance evaluation to everybody knows what's going on. And as far as it being subjective, there is a policy in here that allow if an employee thinks they're being mistreated or discriminated against in some way, it does allow them to file a grievance and go through a process to address that. And I've told several employees that if they think if there's an issue, they need to file something, but it has to be in writing. It can't be them coming in and saying, well, I feel this is being done. Well, the policy requires before I can do anything, I have to have it in writing. So there is a policy in place to address those issues.
I'm just going to comment how he just explained that. I feel exactly, I'm right. I'm with it 100%. And when you have, like Mr. Jules saying, when you have a manager and you have an associate that's coming up for review, that's not going to be able to qualify for a step increase, and it's a surprise to that associate when they get there, then that manager, everybody works for somebody, and that manager needs to be looked at to talk about, are they doing their job? Because if I'm having a problem with Mr. Dickey's performance throughout the year, and I wait all the way till performance review to talk to him about it, well, then I'm not the manager, and I shouldn't be a leader either. We should be having those conversations so that we're trying to get him there before it's time that he finds out he's not getting something. It's just some training that we might have to do for leadership training. Maybe that's what we need to look at. I don't know.
Mr. Dickey.
I'll give you an example. I've been in management for probably about 25 years. I have seen merit and then pay scale. I've seen this individual doing an outstanding job, and this guy over here wasn't doing an outstanding job. And here you are, you got management. This guy was outstanding, never get promoted or never got a pay increase because it depends on the management. If management is not honest in the supervision, it won't work because you're going favoritism, like I said, politicians, So if a system worked like the mayor said and Mr. Davis said, it would be fine if management do their part the honest way.
Mr. Dickey, you are totally right on that side. The management has to be all the way up to the top as far as covering what we'll say the first line supervisors are doing now. As small as my department is, I'm hearing, well, he doesn't do that. She doesn't do that. Why should I have to do that? If we put this thing into a merit increase to where it can be said to, well, then you're not getting a raise this year. But this person is going to get a raise because this person is doing more than you are doing. you are riding coattails, you're not getting anything. But I agree on your part too. It has to be covered all the way through management. It has to be covered all the way through the top. Like I said, as small as my department is, especially in a small department, it has to be covered through the top. The mayor, he's got all kinds of people that he has to take care of. And it's just, it has to be covered all through the top. It has to go from the bottom to the top. As a first line supervisor to the department I work for a sheriff. It has to go all the way through. It cannot stop. It cannot stop. Well, I'm going to go talk to a lieutenant. I'm going to go talk to a jail administrator. It can't stop there. It has to go all the way through the top. Those top line managers, supervisors have to cover the bottom line, first line supervisor that is doing these merit increases. It has to, otherwise it's not going to work.
Not to muddy the waters, but we haven't at all discussed, and this doesn't address COLAs, cost of living adjustment. Are we still looking at possibly doing that as the broad base raises? I hate to use that term, across the board to escalate people just so they're not going backwards. And this will be on top of that, or is this going to throw COLA out the window strictly for this? You know, to me, the unfairest thing that we ever do as county government is not at least address a COLA, a cost of living adjustment based on inflation, because that affects everybody across the board. And I'd hate to see us use the excuse that we've done this, so we're not doing the other, like we've done too many times before. And I know in most people's mind, a raise is a raise is a raise. They don't equate whether it's merit, whether it's COLA, whether it's step. They just want a raise. But we haven't at all talked about that. Did the study in any way look at COLAs or factor it in? Or I know that we looked at that percentage based on what, you know, it has been, but on this year, that's out the window. I mean, I'm getting a 5.9% COLA, you know, for sitting on my butt. And, you know, so people out here busting theirs, I think we ought to be looking at that as well. So I don't know. I don't want to lose sight of that. And I don't want us to lose that in the dialogue, in the discussion. This may not be the proper place to insert it, but I just want to make sure that we don't overlook that.
I think it's exactly the place that we insert this, because all the discussions we're having has a bottom line figure to it. It will be affected by all the citizens in the county. And so when we're talking about this, we're talking about different things that are in play. COLA being one, step raises being one, merit pay being another. So there's three different ingredients in the cake right now. And how do you best manage that as you go forward? Mayor?
Yes, sir. I did discuss that with Mr. Thompson when we were addressing this, and he came to my office and he said, for a cost of living adjustment, let's just throw out there, you would say you're going to do a 2% cost of living adjustment. You just adjust all your numbers up 2%. And then that doesn't go back down. It goes up to 2%, and you adjusted earlier before you go into your budget, you adjust it up to 2% for your cost of living adjustment. And so that way it's already built in. And that's what he's advised to do every year. Adjust it to your cost of living adjustment, put that into your numbers, and then budget going forward based on that.
So you would take whatever you determine that cost of living adjustment to be, and you would apply it to the dollar amounts across the board, no matter what step they're in, no matter where they're at. I understand that, and I assume that's the way it would work. I'm just saying, I don't know that, I think we're going to have some people, trying to be delicate, that would have a hard time separating the two and understanding that. That's all I'm saying. I don't want us to not be able to do the COLA. And I think that addresses the people that are marginal. Maybe they aren't the exceptional employee, but they're not bad enough to fire. They're getting something. They know they're moving up. They're not going backwards. So I think as long as we can try to incorporate that every year, irregardless of what the steps do. Now, I know this is going to be a big chunk to bite off initially getting this started, but it's long overdue in my opinion. And I just want us to be able to not sell this and people that are going to approve this or be subject to it to think that they're not going to ever have a cost of living adjustment based on it. That was my point.
So you're saying that the COLA would be step one in the process and that it would possibly be automatic?
My thinking is whatever policy we put in place, that we try to also put in that policy that a COLA would be given every year based on the cost of living adjustment. There's any number of ways if you don't want to calculate it, you can just tie it to Social Security. They've already done all the numbers for you. You know whatever Social Security is getting is going to be the freshest basis of a cost of living adjustment, more so than anybody, as far as trying to, that way you're not having to gather data to compute what it's going to be. That data is given to you pretty much every year. Problem is you might be a year behind or a few months behind in that, but I just would like to see step one be an automatic cost of living adjustment so that people stay the same, that they don't go backwards in their buying power from what they make, and then merit, if they deserve merit pay increase, base it on what we have here in this step scale. That's my thinking of the fairest thing across the board. And that's the direction I'd like to see us take, but I'm just happy to see us take any direction, just to be honest with you. Like I say, I feel it's long overdue. It's a can that's been kicked down the road too many times. I applaud the mayor for getting us to this point, and I hope we can take this point and move forward with it in a way that we need to keep our, like I said earlier, my opening statement, we need to keep our good people. And if they're not good people, we need to replace them with good people. And the first key is salary and benefits. But if they think this is what I'm getting, this is all I'm ever going to get, you're going to turn a great employee into a mediocre employee.
Totally agree. So, okay, that's step one, then would be the COLA, and then now we're discussing step two and how it blends. Maybe you had something to add to what Mr. Jewell was saying.
Yes, sir. And I'll give you an example. And we do follow the Social Security as far as what the cost of living adjustment is going to be. Most do. And I'll just give you an example. I'll go back to Bob. Let's say we're sitting here going into the end of 2021. Right now, our scale says Bob was going to go from 1384 to 1416. Well, let's assume we have a 2% cost of living adjustment. You adjust the numbers up, which means that 1416 level, once you put in the cost of living adjustment, is now 1444. And you just put a notation in there saying increases in the steps was due to 2% cost of living adjustment as determined by the United States Social Security Administration. So that's why I'm saying you would do that earlier in the year. So when your department heads are going into the performance evaluation and then doing their budget, they already know the adjusted items as far as cost of living adjustment. They've got an adjusted pay scale to know Bob's going to go from 1384 to 1444 if I give him this increase. So that's what I was saying, and that's what Mr. Thompson and I had talked about. He said you would do that adjustment in the pay scale and adjust all the numbers up to 2%, and then if they get a raise, then it's at that new level.
I hope we can call these things what they are. you know, cost of living adjustment is not a raise. It might be a raise in your wages, but it's not a raise. You're not making any more money than you were making before. So, you know, let's not call these raises. If it's a COLA, it's a COLA. And I think it's pretty easy to explain. I think it's pretty easy to explain where we come up with the numbers if we do tie it to the Social Security index or whatever. And it's easy for us. We know what that's going to be as far as budgeting when we're putting the budget together. You know, we know how many dollars more it's going to take. And while we're in some semblance of a growth cycle, it should be able to, we should be able to meet those needs, I think.
Yes, sir. I'll just say, if you, that's what I was saying, we can put a notation on there showing that there was adjusted up to 2%, but the raise that's built into the scale is still going to be there. That if you go from 1384 to the 1416, there's already a 32-cent raise that's in there. So you're still, that 32-cent raise is still built into the steps. You just adjust the numbers up 2%. So they're going to get the 2% cost of living adjustment and then the 32 cents on top of that.
COLA and a raise built into the step right off the bat.
And it might be less than 2%, it might be more. Inflation's doing it.
Mr. Davis.
I think the merit would be more palatable to the employee if they know they're getting the COLA. You know, even if they don't get a merit, they. Okay.
Now, I think it's a consensus here from the group, from what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're all in favor of moving forward at this moment in time with the theory of the COLA being part of step one. The raises that was just mentioned as an example would be a part of the COLA. It's separate, but in that step one, I guess.
Yeah, when you go in, let's say you would adjust your pay scale in January, February, you do your performance evaluations in February, and then they'll start doing their budgets in March, I believe. And then that way they know they've got the adjusted scale here and they'll know, okay, I've got 6 employees that are going to get an increase, and I've got maybe 2 that just didn't merit it this year. They're still going to get their 2% cost of living adjustment. Even the two that doesn't get the raise are still going to get their 2% cost of living adjustment. They're just not going to get that raise up. So it'll all be built into it so that they, when they go in and do their budget, they can go, okay, I got this and this and this one. Now I know that we increased wages this much. We can calculate what the benefit increases are going to be. So I think it'll make it much easier for budgeting for labor purposes as if we adopt something like this and go forward with it.
I would like to interject something that I did last time, and this is just me putting in my 2 cents worth. We did speak last time about this, but I'm going to speak about it again tonight. Something that I thought in the wage study that is vacant, that I think the committee needs to consider as well, is that the educational system and the employees in the county that are both certified and non-certified were not part of this compensation study. And the state does not pay for all of the monies that come to the educational system, especially when it comes to the non-certified. So some of the people in non-certified are our secretaries or are our cooks, or there's people in the educational system that need to be part of this process because they're county employees and receive county compensation just like the others. And when I asked Mr. Thompson that, he said he was not asked to do that. And I think we're leaving off, I mean, there's like 80, I may be telling this wrong, I think it's 87 non-certifieds that are here in the county. And there's over maybe 150 something that are certified. And when we start talking about increases in wages going forward, I think we don't need to be leaving anybody out. Now, that's just Bill Ferguson's thought. Now, I'm gonna go around the committee here and
Well,
y'all help me out a little bit.
yeah, I could adjust that right off the bat. Dr. Satterfield said they were going to do their own.
Okay. Committee members, are you? Mr.
Hear you. I didn't hear you.
Dr. Satterfield said they would do their own wage study.
And I think that's what, it's up to them to pay their people what they want to. I think if we put this in place, it's going to be hard for them not to adopt it themselves or something similar to it. I kind of feel like I would hope that's what would happen in conversations I've had. I believe that is what would happen.
I just know that the state's going to give them what they're going to give them, and that's all they're going to give them. So any other funding mechanism that might be in addition to that, they might cover the ground where there's a vacancy is going to have to come from this body. So that's something we need to consider.
Also, the state is looking this year at BEP, that formula, reevaluating it. Part of what will be discussed will be just that, the non-certified personnel, which was always left out of the BEP formula, which hopefully will be put into the BEP formula. And if that happens, that would take care of this issue. But that's in the hands of the state. We know, I don't know that the Lord knows what they're going to do, but I'm just saying that is part of what they're looking at. I know that for a fact.
Mr. Davis.
As far as agree, nobody gets left out, absolutely. Whether that's being handled at the state or us, one way or the other, they don't get left out. I mean, but I don't think we can make that decision until we know what's going on with what they're saying.
And we can't tell them what to pay these people. That's up to the school board. We can appropriate money for raises, but they don't have to give it to them. And if I'm wrong on that, somebody correct me.
I just know the funding mechanism to a degree is going to come from here. So as we're thinking about doing these things, there's going to be discussions of where the funding is going to be coming from and that nature. So we need to know an overall figure of what that is. And so that's why I'm saying we don't want to leave anybody out for a couple of reasons. You don't want to leave them out, number one. And number two, you don't want to have I didn't know it was going to cost that much moment either. Ms. Baker, your thoughts?
I just agree. The schools, they're going to do their own. It's no different than the highway department. We don't tell the highway department what to pay their employees. They handle that themselves. I think the school's the same way.
Mr. Dickey? Just your thoughts on that topic. Talking about the school system being part of the study. Okay. Something happened. Okay. So compensation study, merit increases. So we're all on the same page about the COLA. Where would you like to take this from here?
Is we still on the pay scale, or? I think Mr. Dickey had a question.
Mr. Dickey.
Reason why I'd say pay scale is what's better. I can give you an example. If you start the pay scale for like January 2022, everybody's on the same pay scale. Well, you get to a point, and if you use merits, and this one guy come up and say, hey, and he's doing a good job, and he thinks he should get promoted or whatever, get a pay increase. Well, when you're on the pay scale and they do the same thing, and when it comes to budget, you know what you got to do on financial situation. But when you're on a scale, everybody's on the scale, there's no complaints. There's no way, hey, we don't have no complaint. Everybody's on the same scale. If you get 10 years in, that's how much money you're going to get. I mean, like the Postal Service, well, I was a PS5. Everybody, if you start next year, in January, your pay scale stay the same. And the management can't say you're going to get an increase or nothing. It's all the same. And I don't understand why, if you use marriage, you're going to have people complaining. They say, why am I getting promoted? And this other guy it's not, this other guy getting promoted and I'm not, you know what I mean? But if you have this pay scale, it stays the same. The local government, you know, like the commissioner and the mayor, and you got your budget, it'd be the same. Not sure you know how much you're gonna have, but in the budget, to cover up the pay scale, you know, the salary.
Okay. Any other discussions at the moment concerning what we've been over so far with the compensation study, the merit increases? It looks like we're going to be able to have a combination of both. We're going to have the COLA as step one. This other mechanism will be step two. We talked about who all will be included in the study. I'd like to at this moment go through the committee and let's move the conversation for just a second to the aspect of trying to compare ourselves to the study and the different entities that we were compared to, and were we on cue with, were we compared well, or did we not compare very well? So I'm gonna go away from pay grades for just a minute, and it looks like under recommendations, it's on page 6, employee salary adjustments. We talked about this for just a second, but we haven't really gone in depth about this. So that's what I'd like to talk about next, but I'd like to go back to finish up before we go to that. That's where we're going next. Is there anything else on the merit increases and the step raises, Mayor, that you'd like to add to the conversation that we've had so far?
No, I think we've pretty well covered most of it.
Okay, well, I want to open up the discussion then about page 6, recommendation for the salary, employee adjustments, general increase. I'm just looking at the formula itself. All employees move up one step, average total increases $1,869. It shows the percentage of employees with salary adjustments that are in range. And then it also talks about a cost, a total 12-month cost, approximately $236,000, could phase in over 12 to 24 months. Going forward, all employees meeting performance expectations move one pay step each year. So I'll open up discussions now. Anybody like to talk about this particular aspect of the salary adjustments? Mr. Jewell.
I think it's going to be hard to do the phased in thing other than year to year. I could see where you could do, 12, excuse me, half of it one year, half of it next year, like they're saying over 24 months. You can't necessarily phase it month to month because you're not gaining anything by doing that other than making it really hard on people doing payroll. Because we're budgeting for the year ahead, so the money's there. So you're not saving the money. You would save it, maybe half and half. Like I said, it's a big chunk to take off all at one time, but either way, whether you do half of it this year, half of it next year, you're still taking that chunk over a short period of time. And if we're not going to do it, then all we're doing is getting further and further and further behind, kicking the can down the road. So my thing is, let's just do it. If we can afford to do it, throw it to budget and finance, let them see if they can come up with the money. If the mayor can find the money, I'm on board doing it. Boom, one big foul swoop, get everybody started, get us on an even keel, and make it work. If we think this is a good idea and this is the way we need to go, that's my suggestion.
Mr. Davis.
So just real quick, this initial move, this initial bump, is this going to be considered like a cost of living bump? is it equal to that? Like based on this year, if we had a study, if we knew our, you know, the cost of living bump should be 2%, is that 2%? I just wonder.
I think when they did it, they had built in what the current pay level was. So it was adjusted up to what the current cost of living adjustment was. Now, he said, if you're going in the next fiscal year, you'll need to go ahead and do your cost of living adjustment. If you're going to do the increase, go ahead, incorporate your cost of living adjustment and then do that.
So that makes sense to me. If it, like what you just said, everybody gets this, we do it, we get started, because you're going to need some time to explain all this to all, you know, to everybody anyway. The associates is going to be affected as well as the leaders. It gives you time. Everybody gets this, call it the cost of living bump or whatever you call it. And then you have time then to explain now this process so that next year you're going to get a cost of living as well as possibly a merit. That also gives you time to work on your performance. You're going to get performance evaluations, all that kind of stuff. You need time to get all that in place and get it working. That's just my thoughts.
Any other members?
Real remind everyone that we actually didn't do any increase this last budget year. We did in that they get an extra 2-week pay to bring in to, you know, to the accrual payroll situation. But as far as their hourly rates, they're still making what they were making last year. So that was one of my reasons, some of my reasoning for going ahead and trying to start this in next year's cycle. Just some of it, I guess you could say some of the funding for it is already built in to the budget because of that extra 2-week pay cycle. So your total payroll would be less, even then you bump this on top of it. You're not going from here, you're going from here. Does that make sense?
You're capturing that revenue
You're
stream.
going to recapture part of that by doing this. If I had a hard time explaining that.
Mr. Burton?
Completely agree with Commissioner Jewell. We have to do something quickly, and just us running around saying that we're working on it, we need to do something. These people need their raises, they need their money. I'm so tired of losing people to different counties for darn near pennies on some of them, dollars on others. We have to keep the people in this county.
Mr. Dickey?
My question is, like he said, you got to come up with some solution, because when you're losing people from the county and they're going outside the county, you know, the revenue is going out, it's not coming in. And we got to make a determination when you're going to start the fiscal year, or you're going to start in January 2022.
Mr. Burton?
I have talked to numerous people. They say, we can't. Why'd you cut me off, Bill? I've talked to countless people to say, well, we have to go outside of Hartsville to buy our food, because obviously you might get a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread cheaper at a Walmart in Smith County, Sumner County, or whatever. If we give the people the money, they will stay. They will stay here, they will spend it here. Nobody wants to drive for an hour, 45 minutes to buy a loaf of bread to save a nickel.
Amen.
They won't do it. They will stay here, they will shop here. Shops will open. The mayor's have been working on stuff, getting businesses in here. Businesses will come here because people will want to work in this county so that they don't have to run out of town. I hate it. I hate driving out of town.
Mr. Jewell?
I've got one simple question. I should have brought it up before. Jumping a page to results on page 7. And we may have covered this and it just went beyond me. Urban Services Law down toward the bottom. What is that? right above veteran services, right above water sewer on page 7.
That's the sheriff budget that's in the urban services district.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dickey.
I have a question that, now, would the pay for this,
And Mr. Dickey, your microphone cut off. If you could,
what I'm trying to say, get this program going, where the revenue gonna come from? To pay for this?
right now, your revenue streams are the same. They always are: property taxes, sales tax, all that kind of. If you're going to do it all in one, we're going to have to go back and do analysis and see, kind of project what that budget's going to be. And then you may have to do a tax increase. You may not. I mean, again, we're going to know a lot more after we get past October and you see how your property taxes are rolling in and those kind of things. Our sales taxes are still pretty healthy. I don't know if we're going to see what is that property tax collection going to look like due to, recovery from COVID and all this kind of stuff. So as you get past the beginning of the year, because you get the 2% discount to pay in October, 1% pay in November, you get a lot of your sales tax, property taxes comes in on those 2 months. So we'll have a lot better idea once we get into November, what our property tax collections are looking like. And so it'll be just a projection there, thinking, okay, here's what we think our revenue is going to be, what our increased cost if we do this, and then trying to figure out, what the revenue situation looks like.
That's, and again, I want to reemphasize that we could phase this in over 12 or 24 months. And this hour, we probably just need to leave that as an option based upon what's going to come before us as we go down the road on this.
Yes, sir. I'd say ultimately that decision is probably going to be a budget and finance.
Okay. We didn't go over the benefits review. Do you all want to go over that with us? Do y'all feel like that's something we did not discuss last time?
What was that?
Benefits, health.
Do we want to take this separately, or are we going to try to do it all as one package? You're the chairman, I'm asking.
That's a good question. Mr. Burton?
That's a big question. That's a huge question. I'm all for going at this thing separately.
I am too.
Let's get over one before we get to the other.
I'm very much in favor of the things that we've talked about tonight with the salaries and step increases and COLAs and all that sort of thing. If we can move forward with that to budget and finance or wherever we need to go with it. Benefits, what I saw other than possibly some things on insurance, we're pretty much okay. Yeah, there's some things that we could tweak like vacation or time off or things of that nature, but that's not the bigger issue. I think the pay is truly the bigger issue. I don't think anybody's going to say, I'm not going to come to work for you because you're only going to give me 15 days after 5 years of vacation. I mean, they don't think that way. After they've been here 15 years, they think that way. But I think, I'd like to see us take these two issues separately, would be my recommendation. What's the mayor's thoughts on it?
Everybody else is shaking their head on committee. Mr. Dickey?
When it comes to benefits, like vacation time, and when a person got 30 years and that, when they cash in their annual leave, what are you going to do? Get paid $15 a day? It should be paid what he's making per day at the present time. In other words, if I'm making $100 a day working for the county, and when you retire and you catch in your annual leave, it should be $100 per day, not $15 a day. That's something you might want to look down the road because it's not fair.
Okay. So then we're going to table that issue for a second on the benefits. That's what everybody's, okay. Anything else you'd like to cover this evening?
Sorry, it was tickling my nose. So no, a lot of the benefit stuff is going to be in the personnel policy because we made some changes based on what we got feedback. So a lot of the benefit stuff you're going to cover when we go through the personnel policy. So if the committee wants to just go ahead and deal with the wages tonight, and that's completely up to you. I'm here to do what you want. I mean, I would personally like to get a little bit through the personnel policy, but if a committee would rather just deal with this tonight and consider it another night, that's completely up to you.
What's the will of the body?
I think benefits can be handled in personnel policy. We're going to be looking at them there anyway. There are several things like what Mr. Dickey pointed out, which comes into play particularly with some of the people that have overtime built into their typical work week schedule. They're not getting paid the overtime when they take their vacation time. Those type things we can address in our policy. Certainly, there are things that there are benefits that we can provide to employees that have been suggested in times past that just never did seem to come to fruition, that really don't cost the county a lot. You know, giving somebody their birthday off means a lot to them, but it doesn't cost us that much. You can say, oh, you've also lost productivity. Well, if they're disgruntled for having to work their birthday, they're not going to be very productive anyway. So I think, you know, there are things like that that we can address that are not going to break the bank and make our employees happier and make them feel like they're cared about. So I agree with the mayor. I think these things should be just addressed in the personnel policy at this point. I'd like to see us move forward with the recommendations that we've come up here with tonight. We may get to budget finance, we may get to the whole commission, and this all be shot down. Just because we like it doesn't mean everybody else is going to like it. And but I think we need to be prepared to be able to explain it and explain our reasonings if this is what we want to do. I'm not comfortable making the motion to move this forward. I would leave that with someone else on the committee, since I will have to deal with it as chairman of budget and finance.
I'd like to make the motion, Mr. Ferguson. Move it on to budget and finance. Let them take a look at it, see where it stands. If it comes back to us, then we'll talk about it some more and shoot it back to them again.
These to try to implement in the coming year.
Jim.
Be moved to the budget and finance. Do I have a second on that motion? Ms. Baker has the second. To move tonight's discussions over the three on to budget and finance for further discussions to see where we are and where we measure up from what their thoughts are. But this year, as soon as possible, Mr. Chairman. Okay, let's vote on that then. All in favor of this moving forward to budget and finance, say aye. All opposed, like sign. It will move on to budget and finance as soon as possible. Okay, so we've been here for 1 hour. Do we want to step into anything else this evening? Mayor, where did we leave off last time? Because we kind of stopped and went over the compensation package last meeting. Where did we stop, Vicki, when we were last?
You're on page 13 going into section 5 benefits.
Thank you. Okay. You get a good starting point now? Okay. All right. Well, I think we got something accomplished here tonight that's going to be really important if the rest of the governing body sees it the way that what this committee has discussed tonight. And there's a lot of explaining to do. And I still think there's some things that are going to be discussed about the compensation study I do have some questions about it or some concerns about it. But I think overall it has given us the information that we need. I don't think it takes a genius to know that we're facing times now where we're going to have to do some things. And I'd rather us not be, it appears, and just my opinion for a second, that we have sometimes been reactionary as we've dealt with increases in compensation and whatnot than being proactive. And I think we're going to need to shift gears and be a little more proactive as we go forward, because even though right now we may be thinking about proactiveness, as fast as the things are changing in increases in pay, we may end up being reactionary when we're trying to be proactive, quite honestly. So if that's far as we'd like to go tonight, we will be discussing the benefits as we come back. Well, let's do this. Customary to being on the personnel committee, we always pick our next date. And as you know, in December, we usually do not meet. So let's pull out our calendars, everybody. And let's look at the month of November, which does have a large holiday in it. I'd like to try to pick something on a Thursday because there was one committee member that struggles to get here on a Tuesday. So can everybody look at Thursdays for a minute and see what you're thinking in the terms of November? Not the 25th. We're going to rule that one out.
4th is out for me.
4th is out. 4th is no good for two of you.
11th or 18th is only thing right now that's on the calendar before the
No, it would not.
November 18th.
I mean, 11th, that's day too long.
Yeah.
18th, okay?
No, I'm sorry. I've got a question, or it's just a comment. You know, the calendar, this meeting was scheduled from 6 to 8 tonight. And I don't understand why we're quitting after just an hour. Can we not at least get a little bit into the benefits? Because as you said, we don't meet in December. And I feel like, you know, the employees of Trousdale County have been waiting on this wage study. I feel like we owe them. We can go at least another hour and talk about it. It was on the calendar. If everybody looked at their calendar, we were scheduled to meet from 6 to 8. And, you know, if nobody else wants to go forward, that's fine. But I feel like we've had the material. We should go as far as we can.
What would you all like to do?
I'm fine either way. I think we covered a big chunk of what we needed to cover tonight. I think the other absolutely needs to. I think, don't you think that one night, maybe this next hour we can finish it up? I don't think we can finish it up this next hour, but maybe we could.
Oh, I don't expect to finish it, but at least get started on it. I mean, it was on the agenda, you know, to at least get through it.
I'll stay with midnight.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least the meeting was scheduled. It was on the calendar from 6 to 8. So I don't understand why we can't go at least another hour and get through some of it. Okay, I mean, that's fine. It's just
I'm
my
okay either way. It
opinion.
doesn't
If
matter to
nobody
me.
else wants to go, that's fine. That's fine. I just, you know, I just feel like everybody's waited on this. We've been working on this for a long time. And
Mr. Dickey?
I think, like she said, we've been working on it a long time, but I think we should wait, find out what budget finance is going to say, and then make the meeting. That's what I'm thinking. That way we can cover what they discuss on the matter.
I don't think anything in the benefits part of it, we're gonna cover in personnel. It's redundant because and it's not gonna affect budget per se as far as this part of it will affect budget planning. But we do need to talk about it. I'm fine doing it tonight, we're doing it. I thought we kind of had decided to pretty much take it up personnel. Maybe I misunderstood that. Seems to be consensus with the president at the time. Although, y'all tell me what you want. Mr.
Mayor, have any ideas? Keep rolling.
We can keep going if you want.
Let's roll on. We'll move on. Let's go to this subject for just a second. Let's move on. But before we go, we're not going to finish it most likely tonight. We might. How about that November the 18th? If we don't. And let's do it at 6 o'clock. Okay. Yes, sir. The 18th at 6. Yeah, that in my phone here. Okay, so we're moving on to benefits then, correct? You have the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Well, as you can see, we get into, should be section 5 benefits, section 5.1. This only applies to Trousdale County government employees and all new hires after January 1st, 2001. So does not apply to former town of Hartsville employees. Eligibility section, we added a second section that is a practice we're already doing. All request leave forms signed by the employee and department head official have to be submitted along with the employee's timesheet for the employee to receive the approved leave pay. This kind of goes along with documentation that's required by the comptroller's office. So it's a practice we're already doing. It was just not stated in the policy, so we just wrote it into the policy. Any questions? All right. Going into sectional holidays, it was requested that we look at adding New Year's Eve. I believe the statement was that the state is off on New Year's Eve. So it was requested that we put that in there. So we did submit it in there. It's up to the committee if they want to keep it, but I believe I was told that the state's off on that day and that a lot of departments or offices that deal with the state can't really accomplish much that day. And just so for maximum efficiency here, how do you all want me to cover this? You want me to just cover the changes I proposed, and do you want me to keep going until there's a question asked, or how do you want to? Just keep going until I get a question? Okay. All right. And then we put in a new subsection 6, as a holiday is to be paid based on 8 hours. This was something that was done by the personnel policy before I took office, and we found it in notes. So we just went ahead and put it in here. And I believe that is current practice. So we just put it in the policy to get it stated. These two new sections, 7 and 8, all full-time employees receive holiday pay. It's not to exceed 8 straight time hours at the regular rate. And there was trying to get some clarification on this. It's provided they work a full shift on their last scheduled work shift prior to the paid holiday. And they have to also work a full shift on their first scheduled work shift after the holiday, so the day after the holiday. Or they should be unable to work either of those 2 days because of illness. And then there's a section here basically saying if they're going to be out 3 days, then they have to have a sick note. But this was kind of pulled over, I think, from maybe Wilson County or somebody has these kind of provisions. I don't know if yours still shows a proposed section D. I think I got that. Yeah, but I think we were going to put something in there in case we found something else and then nothing came up. So you really don't need that subsection D there. So you can just do away with that. Yes, sir.
You say you have to work the day after a holiday and the day before a holiday. Can you not be on a vacation day before that holiday?
Yeah, it'd be a scheduled vacation.
Does it
We're
say
just talking
schedule?
about.
I left my stuff in the office. I'm sorry, but it said.
Yeah, if you're on. Thank you.
All right, I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, if you're on a scheduled holiday, it's not going to affect your holiday pay. It's just for those situations where we've had people that would call in sick at the last minute and then they'll call in sick the day before the holiday, get a holiday, and then maybe do it again after the holiday. And they were taking advantage of it and it was really hurting us on staffing issues. So we're trying to address that in that policy.
Hey, can I have a quick question? And it might not be the right spot, but I know when we were meeting on this before, I believe it was fire department. Maybe I was wrong, but there was a concern that was brought up, and I don't, maybe it's not with holidays, maybe it's with vacation pay, but, you know, their days are not 8 hours in that department. And so it was, a concern that, you know, their folks would take a day off and lose money because they were only getting paid at an 8 hour versus whatever their normal type of day is, being 12 or whatever it was. We just want to make sure that we address that because they shouldn't be losing money by taking their holiday or by taking a vacation day, right? It might be a little different.
Well, in that context, I think that context, it was based on the vacation. I think that's what the discussion was at that time. If you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that they mentioned holiday, but I could be wrong.
And that might be right. I just wanted us to get that back out on our own here. I don't want to miss that. So.
And I think Director Beatty was not able to be here tonight. He's indisposed, but I think there is a representative here, maybe from the EMS, and it was from the EMS, so it was from the ambulance service, that could maybe address that when we get to the vacation section.
I think it probably should apply both ways. People equate them as the same. If you start doing it for vacation days, but you're not going to do it for holidays, I think the simple language is just make regularly scheduled work day. That way, the people that are scheduled for 8 hours get paid for 8. If they're scheduled part-time for 5, they get paid for 5. If they work 12 hours or 14 hours, and that's what they're regularly scheduled for, that's what their pay is going to be. I think that's the easiest way, unless it violates some legalities with FICA or something to make sure that people are getting what their normal day's pay would be when they take a holiday or vacation.
I've heard that as well. How do we adjust that to where that does not happen? That's one particular department that functions under a different schedule than everybody else. And Mr. Davis is correct in that they shouldn't be losing money as they take a vacation. Now, how do we best adjust that? Do y'all want time to look at that and see what we can do?
Well, there's on page 7, there's a subsection B, and then there's in red, there's a inserted section 2 that says, gives out what the work days are for different departments that have different days. So you've got, says typical work day is 8 hours. Emergency medical technicians and paramedics typically work a 24-hour shift. Sheriff's Department's employees typically work an 8-hour, 10-hour, or 12-hour shift. So I guess if you could take the language instead of saying paid on the basis of 8 hours, you'd say paid on the basis of their typical work day. And then that would be your definition of what a typical work day is. No, I was gonna say, you need to turn your microphone on, please.
Then that's, okay, if that's gonna solve that, then it's already there, then we should be set to go, correct?
Well, I think you would just have to change this, what we got in back to section 5 on that 6, where it says a holiday is paid on the basis of 8 hours. Instead of saying basis of paid hours, you say a holiday is paid on the basis of typical work day. I believe that's what
Just use the language from the other or
Yeah,
typical work day.
you just use that. We put that subsection 2 in there to be a definition section, so we didn't have to continually do that throughout the document. So when you use that phrase, that's what your definition is. So if that's what you're wanting to do, you just say pay on the basis of their typical workday. And I believe that'll cover it, but I will defer to Mr. Beller on that. I think that should address the issue.
And we're not putting this in effect tonight, but if that's what we think we need to do, then that's the direction we go. I'm very much in favor of trying to get away from that 8-hour designation to what their typical workday is.
And that was for holiday and vacation?
That's my thinking.
Is that the way it's written?
Well, right now, we're just in the holiday section. You want to do the same thing when you get to vacation.
All right, fine.
Okay. The next one was a new subsection 8, says holiday pay will not be paid if the employee is on layoff status, the employee is temporary or seasonal employee, part-time, the employee's department is not in operation because of temporary shutdown, the employee is on a non-pay leave of absence when a holiday occurs, or the employee is requested to work during a paid holiday and the employee refuses to do so. The section 9 says, if an employee is on sick leave, a physician's certificate or note excusing the employee from the working the day before, the day of, and the day after a holiday must be presented, or employee will not receive pay for the holiday. And if any scheduled paid holiday falls on a Saturday, the holiday is usually observed on the preceding Friday, and if it falls on Sunday, then the following Monday is usually observed as the holiday. That's already current practice, and that's pretty much stated in another part of the personnel policy, but we repeated it here just to try to address any issues when people read this section specifically. Special pay provisions, we did add a sentence onto this one. It says every effort will be made to allow all employees off on each designated holiday. If it is necessary with department head approval for an employee to work on a holiday, the employee would be paid 8 hours plus holiday pay, paid 8 hours holiday pay plus the hours worked at the regular rate. How are we going to do that now if you're doing a typical work day? How's that going to go if they're working as well? Are they getting double paid? Okay. I'll go on to vacation leave then. We do the big change here. They've got some changes off top in sections 1 and 2. Is we propose to move vacation from, instead of being on a calendar year, to move it to the fiscal year. This was something I think Smith County did recently, and some other counties do it on a fiscal year versus a calendar year. Yeah.
Is it going to be any easier or same as far as trying to administrate it and keep up with it? Does it make it easier to keep up with? I know it's going to make it easier for the employee to keep up with it, but as far as your staff?
It makes it much easier on us for documentation, because right now, the way you do it, you're spreading across fiscal years. And so if we do it this way, it's much easier to keep track of, and it should be easier for budgeting purposes. And I think, in talking to Mr. Beller and the Smith County mayor, I think it worked out really well going to the fiscal year versus the calendar year there.
How are we going to go make the transition from one to the next? Your vacation, you're going to have either 6 months short or 6 months added to a year. What's your thinking on that?
On that one, since we've got, when we go into section 2, we talk about so many hours that you can roll over. I was trying to think of a way, since again, it also determines when you're going to do it. You're going to put it on effect January 1st. I don't think we're going to have this policy passed by January 1st. That's just my feeling on it. So are you looking at July 1st? Well, then you would try to roll over existing hours into that July 1st. And I'll be honest with you, we went back and forth over it several times, because, okay, you get 2 weeks right now into the current policy. If you make it effective July 1st, what if somebody uses their hours and then hit July 1st, and now they have to do it on an earned basis versus rolling over what's there? There was some discussion about maybe just give them another week that they already start off with another 40 hours, and then they can start building on that. I'll be honest with you, I didn't come up with a good answer on this one. We just had many different scenarios based on what could come out of the personnel committee.
I think this is one of those issues. It sounds good. It's just the implementation is going to be, shall we say, the devil's in the details. Somebody's either going to gain or somebody's going to lose when you make this transition. If you make this transition, there again, it's one of those things that probably from day one it should have been that way, but it wasn't, and I hope we can find a way to rectify it. I would say the simple thing would be to give them an extra 6 months to take their vacation that year, or I don't know whether we want to give them more vacation time for that 6 month period, half it and say you're going to get, for an 18-month period, you're going to get what you would normally get in a year, and you're going to get half again what you would get for that 6 months, but you have to take it in that time span and then start it on the January that we want to start it, probably January 2023, I would assume. But I think that would be the fairest way to deal with it. Is that what you were saying, or did I misunderstand? As one of the suggestions or one of the possibilities.
I think how I was suggesting is, say you're going to put it into effect on July 1st, 2022, that you would, again, if they sat there and they didn't use any of their 2 weeks, well, then they're sitting there with 80 hours of vacation when they hit July 1st, and you can roll over up to 240 hours based on this new section. So they would still be underneath that 240. So that should just roll over. And now they're earning at a rate of 1 day per month. So they'll be building on that. The scenario where I've got, the question I had is, and this is going back to you, how do you make it as somebody's going to complain, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, but also somebody's going to try to game the system. So if you got 2 months, you got 2 weeks beginning, let's say you're under the 10 years and you got 2 weeks starting January 1st of 2022. What if you use them up thinking, well, I'm going to get a reset basically on July 1st. Well, then what if you got somebody else that's wanting to roll it over to build on top of it once they hit the new year? That's where I never could come up to something I felt completely satisfied with, because I couldn't come out with a way I thought it was the most fair to everybody else. I could keep seeing people gaming the system and somebody feeling like they lost and somebody else feeling like they took advantage of it. And that's why I was hoping we could do something group collectively here as a group, because the only thing I could think of is the way you thought of it initially is if you used up your 2 weeks before you hit July 1st, well, then you start building up at the rate of 1 per month, going up to 240. So you're starting at 0 going up. Well, what if somebody else didn't do it? Now they're starting at 80 and going up. Well, again, that was still up to them. They could take it or not. You see, there's several different problems that come up when you start looking at it. And I hate to say I didn't come up with one that I could say, I think this is absolutely the best scenario. I could see several different scenarios in different ways that somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, and somebody may think it's unfair and others think it is fair.
Mr. Beller, question for
I'm
you.
sorry.
Smith County's already been through this. What did they do about this? Let's look into that, because they've already tackled this issue somehow or another, at least as an option, to see how that was addressed. Okay. And we don't have to solve it at this hour, but I'd love to know how they did address that, since they've been down that road before us. Mr. Jewell?
Yeah, and again, I'll have to apologize on that one, but we went over it and over and over it for months and months and months, and we never could come up to one scenario where everybody thought, well, this is absolutely the way to do it. There was issues all the way around.
I guess what I was trying to say was, don't back it up, push it out. Okay, right now, the current vacation period time or holiday pay time, whatever vacation time, is going to end the end of June. Let it stay that, then do an abbreviated period for the last 6 months of the year and give them half of what they would get in that year, and then start the full year in the January to get it on the calendar year basis. That way they're getting half of their vacation for half a year, yes, they're going to have more in that time, but it's not a year anymore, it's 18 months. That makes sense? Instead of backing it up and carrying it over, you're just going to go ahead and say, okay, we're going on January 1st for the last 6 months of this year. You've got this many more vacation days, equal to half of what a year would be. They're getting 10, they'd get 5. They're getting 15, they'd get 7.5, whatever. But that's just a suggestion. But I wasn't sure whether I explained what I was trying to say. That way, no one's losing anything. It's not costing us anything additional. It's just going to start that new process on January 1. Just a thought, but just want to make sure I explained it correctly.
So at January 1, would everybody start at 0 and then start earning it under this new schedule? Be if you're under, I'll just go through it. If you got less than 5 years of full-time service, you're going to accrue vacation at the rate of 1 work day for each month of service, and up to a maximum of 30 working days, which will be 240 hours. If you're between 5 and 10 years, you're going to accrue it at a rate of 1.5 days a month for a total, a maximum of 36 working days, which would be 288 hours. 10 to 15 years of service, you can get up to, you're going to earn it at a rate of 1 3/4 days for each month. So you can get a maximum of 39 work days. It's 312 hours. And then if you got more than 15 years of full-time service, you're going to accrue it at 2 days for each month, or a maximum fraction, a major fraction thereof. And you're going to get up to 240 work days, which is 336 hours. And this vacation schedule here is how it's earned. That came from Wilson County. So would that be, you get that January 1st, let's say it's January 1st, 2023, everybody would have already started over again anyway on the current one. So you're saying at the end, everybody's starting at 0 and earning it up? Or that's where we never could figure out what the transition was going to be?
I'd like to see us get away from the hours, 336, 312, 240, for the same reason that we're trying to get away from it on the 8-hour day. You're going to have kind of a contradictory language here if you don't do away with the hours and just keep it to work days.
On this vacation time, according to this, you got 36 days, right? For example, for so many years, right? Now, after they got 36 days, whatever the total is that going to stop right there, accumulation? Or after that 36 days, you're going to lose those days, or you got to take it before you lose it? In other words, before the end of the year.
You can only accumulate, that'd be your maximum what you accumulate. So you weren't earning anything above that. The whole thing is we would like people to take their vacation days. It makes them more productive throughout the year. They don't have as much stress on them. They get to spend more time with their family. So we want to encourage them to use their vacation, and 36 working days is, I mean, that's a pretty good amount of time to take. So, but that's why you would stop. You wouldn't accumulate above 36 in that scenario. So that's between 5 and 10 years. You can't earn any more than 36, but you can carry it over to the next fiscal year. So you don't lose it. It carries over. Just you can't carry over no more than 36.
Well, what I'm getting the point is, now when you get 36 days, and now I'm on the 38th day in February. So I mean, you're going to have to take that 2 days in that month before you lose it, right?
Well, it's working days. So that would only be whatever your number of schedule. So if you only work 5 days a week, it wouldn't be exactly whatever the calendar, if you had 28 days in a month, it wouldn't be the 28 days. It'd be, if you work Monday through Friday, it'd just be the Monday through Friday. So your weekends don't count towards your 36 working days.
So just to clarify too, as I'm understanding it, in your example, Mr. Dickey, that you're talking about the 36 working days, that's for an associate that's got 5 years of service, but less than 10. They can only earn 1.5 days a month. So that means they can only earn 18 days off a year. So you work for the year, you can earn up to 18 days. Now during that, you're going to take some time. So you take a week So now you just lost 7, or just say you take 10 days, you just lost 10. Now you got 8. You start the next year over, you can earn your whole 18 days again, and you're going to be at 28 days if you don't use any. So you can get all the way up to 36 days, but you're using some as you go, right? I mean, it's a rolling year, keeps on going.
Yeah.
You don't lose it. You can just only get to a max.
Right, in your scenario, so if you had 18 and you used 10 and you got 8, it would roll over to the next fiscal year. So you didn't lose the 8, you carried it over. So now you're building on top of that 8.
Absolutely.
It's just you can't build no more than 36 at a time. So you can't sit there for 2 years and just not take a vacation and keep building. You
Yeah,
can't
you'd
do
have to
that.
go for 2 years, earn every day, not take a day to ever get to the 36.
It's our current policy, or is it ordinance we passed that you can't carry any over? Is it in policy, or was it an ordinance do that? I will remind people why we have that. I know that is not in alignment with what's normally done. The reason is we've had people that did not take their vacation. They left and we had to pay them for 6 months, and it was a budget buster because it was not in the budget to pay them for 6 months. And we actually had a lawsuit filed against us to make sure that that happened. If I'm remembering this correctly, Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Mayor, I know that was before your days, but it was mayor's staff that this came into play on. One of the mayoral assistants never took vacation, had all this time. She retired or quit, I don't remember which, and she said, I've got 6 months you've got to pay me for. And all of a sudden, coming up with that 6 months of salary was a hard pill, and we paid her. We had to pay her. And that's why then we said, not going to let anybody carry it over, not a half a day, not a day, not any days. And if you don't use it, you lose it. And that also was our reasoning was that was an encouragement to people to go ahead and take it, like you were saying earlier, to encourage them to take it, because if you don't take it, you lose it. So that was the reasoning that language was in there before. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, a bad thing. I just wanted to kind of explain the why of it being there.
I'll go back and look at it, but I think there was comp time built in that as well. And comp time was taken completely out of the policy after that, I believe. I don't know exactly what it was, but I think there was comp time rolled into that.
That may have been even the biggest part of it, but I do know that that's why we were trying to do away with those things, not trying to be mean to anybody, because it was just a nightmare to administrate, and it could be a budget buster at the end of someone's career. Now, letting them use vacation time for TCRS time and things like that, that's allowed in state law and with those policies, certainly that's a different issue necessarily from actually paying somebody for it.
I believe under TCRS, you can't use vacation days. You can only use the sick days.
Vacation, sick, whatever. I know I had 2 months added to my retirement date. Vicki, do you remember, was it 2 months, 6 weeks? I don't know. There was some, and typically that happens, and it was unused sick days. You don't get paid for them, but you get credit for them on your retirement. And I think that's in here also later on, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe we address it in here, but that's state law as to how that's figured out.
A thought came to mind with some of the departments that just have one extra employee. Candace, Rita, is that going to be an undue burden? Is that going to cause an issue? If y'all looked at this? Just thinking about y'all as we were having these discussions, like, wonder how that's going to affect them. And that would be for Cindy as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That might be something that might be a little issue to tackle down the road, huh?
So you're talking about limiting how many days can be taken at one time.
Well, I'm just wondering,
No
because
matter
you've got
what
some
your group-
departments that have multiple employees and you can make adjustments, and you got other areas that it might be just two people working in the office. Whole different scenario.
Well, how do you cover it now when somebody's on a 1 week vacation?
And as far as taking it in a row, I will direct you to a section we didn't change. Should be section 5 and the one you got in front of you, and I think it's on page 15. It says vacation leave may be used only at times approved in advance by the employer, which would be a department head or official. Vacation requests will be honored to the extent possible. So if they can't afford for them to be out, they don't have to approve it. It's not an automatic right to take it.
7 is what I was talking about earlier, where we've lined out vacation must be taken in the calendar year with no carryover. Vacation time will be lost if not used within the calendar year. That's what I was trying to address. I'm sorry, I thought we were a little further down than we were. I apologize.
Does the county have a policy on, in other words, if I had 36 days of vacation time and there's someone in the department or within the county need leave because they're sick, are you be able to transfer that to that person?
I'm having trouble with it. No, that's prohibited. Let me see what section that's in here. It says this 7, no employee may give or loan vacation time to another employee. And I think that's in the current policy as well. So I'll go down to the last section. We did put in here that any employee is not eligible to earn vacation time until the employee has completed the 6-month probationary period. That was pretty much just cleaning up some language there. That's current policy. We just cleaned up some language because it used a different terminology versus what the practice, it's stated in another part of the policy. So we just made those the same. And then the last one we did added in is a subsection 9. It says vacation time cannot be used during a 2-week notice period. If an employee turns in a written 2-week notice, the employee will be eligible for payout of his or her unused vacation time on their last payroll. In the event an employee does not give written 2-week notice, any unused vacation time will be forfeited consistent with the separation policy stated in section 6. We did have that happen a couple of times that an employee would, I'm going on vacation, but I'm never coming back. And that would roll us into another month. So we had to pay their health insurance and everything. So we're trying to put a stick in there that if you don't do this, you're going to lose something. So we get a 2-week notice ahead of time. Okay. I'm going to the sick leave. And this one, we did change it from a day to an hour. And again, we were doing that to meet what the personnel policy had voted to do before I took office. So we were trying to abide by what they requested.
On that one, I'm looking at the employees hired on or before the 15th of the month would accrue 1 day. That's a change, is it not, that currently employees will not earn sick leave until after their first full month of employment?
Well, currently it's, and I'll have to have Vicky, if she could explain it, because I'll tell you right now, sometimes I don't get it straight either. I think you have to, and I'll just turn it over to Vicky because she can explain it much better.
Okay. If you're, say you're hired the middle of the month, the middle of October, you won't receive any sick pay until you have worked till the end of November. You have to work a complete month. So that's the way it is now.
Quick question on the 8 hours. Is this another spot where we need to be looking at that same language being typical workday or not?
If that's what you're wanting to do and make it even, I think you would have to change that from 8 hours to the typical workday language.
Okay.
I just assumed we were going to do that anyway, so.
Now, let's go back to that one more time. I'm reading this and I'm not understanding. Employees hired on or before the 15th of the month accrue 1 sick day leave at the end of that month. So if they were hired on the 14th of October, as I'm reading this, they're not there for a full month, but it says they do get a sick leave day at the end of that month, which would be the end of October. So you would only be there half a month and you would have accrued a day. By the way I read that, am I wrong?
Yeah, you hit November 1st, you'd get 1 sick day. Yeah, so it is a change from the current policy, where the
Okay,
current policy.
it is current, okay.
You could have to, theoretically, you could have to work a month and a half before you got a sick day, whereas this one, if you started before the 15th, you would get 1 sick day going into the next month. Down to section 3, again, there was just some change from days to hours, because like, so we were trying to do what the committee had voted to do before, so apparently you want to go back to days instead of hours, but again, this one is mainly for sick leave. We've had some issue getting notes, and it was addressed in one part of the policy, but not specifically stated in the sick leave section. So we got any employee who claims sick leave and the sickness or injury causes the employee to miss 3. We took that out and put in 24-hour because, as we said before, that's what the personnel committee had voted to do before I took office. Or consecutive work, we changed it from days to hours, shall be required to furnish their certificate or note, certificate/note from a medical provider stating the general nature of the sickness or injury and on the day they return to work. That was, that section right there, that requirement is actually stated in, I think it's the separation policy, that if they miss 3 days of work and don't furnish a doctor's note, well, then it's assumed that they've resigned. But it wasn't stated in the sick leave policy. So we just kind of moved that language over and duplicated in here because it's come up several times that somebody's saying, well, we don't have to have a note. Well, yeah, you do, but it's stated away on this other section. So we just moved it there to try to address any confusion that arises that we've had in the past. Now, this next section is this next sentence is one we inserted. It says emergency medical technicians, paramedics who claim sick leave and the sickness or injury causes an employee to miss 48-hour or more consecutive work hours shall be required to furnish a certificate or note from a medical provider stating the general nature of the sickness or injury on the day to work. I'm guessing that would go back to, I guess, 2 working days. There are 2 typical work days. The doctor's statement should also provide that the said employee has been incapacitated from work for the period of his absence and that he is again physically able to perform his duties. And then we inserted this next sentence. Failure to provide the doctor's statement shall result in a day's miss being considered unauthorized absences under section 6, subsection A1A, which was entitled resignation. So that references that section under the separation policy that most people didn't read that far into it. They just looked at the sick leave section and it wasn't specifically stated. So we're trying to get that language in there to clear up those misunderstandings. And then this next section, section 4, the big change there is we removed references to comp time because that was specifically taken out by the commission and not all references got removed. So we went back and cleaned that up. And then this next 3, subsection 5, 6, and 7, we added these. 5 is after a sick leave absence of 10 working days, an employee must request family medical leave in order to keep all benefits in place during the absence. And it tells them, please refer to the section on, of FMLA on the page. Once we get this finalized, we'll insert whatever the proper page number is to see what qualifies as FMLA. Sick leave will not be accumulated when the employee is on unpaid leaves of absences. And then the last subsection 7 states, upon retirement from Hartsville Trousdale County, any employee who has unused accumulated sick leave at the date of his or her term retirement may receive 1 month of retirement credit for each 20 days of leave. This is in accordance with the policy established by the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. Certification of such conversion credits will be required from the department of the employee retires. So that's just basically adopting in what the requirements are for TCRS and specifically state them in their policy, whereas it wasn't before. And then this next section, the COVID sick leave, this is what we adopted, I think, earlier this year, on January 25th. So we don't make any changes under that. We did correct something here. There is a red section that looks like it's bolded, but that was in there already in bolded red to get people's attention. That's not a change we made. That was already what we proposed in January. And then we inserted, I believe we inserted in here Vicky's contact information if he had any questions. Leave of absence without pay. We got after an employee has exhausted his or her accrued sick and vacation leave or has not completed the 6-month probationary period, a leave of absence without pay may be granted at the discretion of the employer. And we inserted, no department head will grant a leave of absence without pay until an employee has exhausted his or her sick and vacation leave and has completed his or her 6-month probationary period. That has been an issue numerous times. And
Page 19 down at the very bottom says, please contact Vicki Howard, and we know that will be you, but in the future, 50 years now, it might be somebody else. Should we maybe say the department person, or is that going to be in the policies with your name? Does that make sense?
I truly think that was on the form that.
Just a department, maybe reference the department rather than the individual.
I think that was on the policy itself when it was first written, and it may have already been read. I really can't remember, and I don't have that policy with me to see.
Not a big deal either way, but I was wondering.
But we could change that to HR
Just
personnel.
yeah.
continuing to leave of absence without pay section. The other change we made was subsection 7. It says the county will endeavor to return employees to the same or equal job they had prior to leave of absence. We cannot guarantee the same job. However, the employee will suffer no loss in employment status. Employees who are granted leave of absence for any reason shall suffer no loss in net credible service to the county as far as vacation, retirement, and length of service awards are concerned. All health benefits coverage will continue during the leave of absence, provided the employee plans to return to work and continues to pay the current percentage, the premium paid by the working employee. Is there a question on that one? I thought I heard somebody.
Do we need to address military service in this somewhere, or is it?
It is.
Okay. I'm sorry, I overlooked it.
Did you say military service? Yeah, there's a complete section on that, which we basically just adopt state law. There's a specific state law on military service, so we just pretty much stated that in here. Okay. Family and medical leave, we added a subsection 7 on that. It says if the employee does not return to work at the expiration of family and medical leave, Hartsville Trousdale County will require the repayment of health insurance premiums it paid on the employee's behalf during the leave period. Reimbursement will not be required if the employee does not return from leave because of the continuance, recurrence, or onset of a serious health condition that prevents the employee from from performing his or her job, or because of further circumstances that are beyond the employee's control. We had an issue where a gentleman went on FMLA recovered, could have come back and performed the job, but refused to come back, and we had paid health insurance on them, all that, and we just lost it. So we're trying to address that situation. And bereavement leave, we did make some changes on this. Again, we went from days to hours, but we're going to go back on that at the request of the committee. And we did insert some more family relationships in this, and this is kind of brings us in line with other counties. Says immediate family shall be defined as spouse, parent, step-parent, children, stepchildren, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, brothers, stepbrothers, sisters, stepsisters, mother-in-law, father-in-law, grandparents or grandchildren of the employee, and legal guardians or dependents. And I believe that kind of brings us in line. I think specifically right off the top of my head, Smith and Wilson counties, I believe, are having those definitions as far as familiar relationships. Voting leave, the only change we made there was inserted. Instead of saying during the time the polls are open, we just said during the hours the polls are open. We just thought that sounded a little bit better language. And then jury duty, the only thing there is removed references to comp time, which the commission had removed, and they didn't all get removed from the personnel policy. So we just complied with what the commission had already done a few years ago. And we didn't make any changes to maternity leave. No.
Vicky, can you check? The female employee, would that not apply to both female and the male as it relates to maternity or paternity law? Do they not have time off for both now?
I think the male is going to be covered under the FMLA. I don't think so. We can check on it to see.
Not that it's going to affect me anyway, but okay.
So we're going to do it for the female, but not the male. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, oops, excuse me.
Well, I'm not sure I like that. I think, I think the male is just as pregnant as the female.
Yeah, and it is addressed, right, Vicky? It's addressed in another section. Maybe I don't know. Just check, see if you should add both there. I don't know.
I mean, we're living in an era of fairness here, and I just want to make sure that a lot of companies now, seriously, do give the father the same amount of time off as the mother gets. I'm not saying that we should do that. I'm just saying that that's not that weird a thought.
Would you check on that and just see where we stand on that one?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The male, the father can take time off, but it is under a different policy.
Okay.
It's under FMLA.
Okay.
And he can take up to 12 weeks off.
Okay.
But the female is not covered under FMLA? Why would you even need a policy for the female?
Because the state of Tennessee also has a Tennessee leave policy, and that Tennessee policy is going to be more under this maternity policy. You have to have both.
Okay.
Mayor, question. Back to the bereavement leave. You crossed off 3 working days and inserted 24 hours, working hours. What was the reason behind that?
Well, we had in there earlier that a typical working day was 8 hours, and it was just to make it fit the 8-hour language. If you're going to the typical working day, which is what I think the committee was wanting to do.
So that'll be changed to,
You would say 3 typical working days if you're adopting the same language that was in the definition section that was
Yeah.
previously stated.
yeah, please. All right, thank you.
We are now at 7:55, and so we still probably need to find this as a stopping place for now. We do need to ask for any public comments that might be from anyone that's here tonight in the public. So I'm gonna mark this where we were, or where we stopped here. Anybody from the public like to comment tonight on the meeting that has transpired? Any comments from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Jewell, have a second? There we go. We are adjourned. Thank you. It's okay.